Spinny Latat stood on the bustling corner of Alexandra Avenue and Punt Road. The wind tugged voraciously at her dress, and she was distinctly aware that she'd never see nor hear from her gentle beau again. His long, thoughtful messages, which she'd at first thought were cringe and impossible to fall for, were now a thing of the past. Her morning ritual was ruined. She'd awoken this day with the strangest feeling in her stomach, like someone had one of those telescopes you find on a peak or a very high, high rise. The ones you can twist 360 degrees to catch a sight of the now inoperative Melbourne Eye, or Peeper John taking off his trousers, blissfully unaware he's being surveyed in his 31st floor apartment. She felt the telescope twist and turn before it locked in on an obsession. It compelled her to rise out of bed, briskly drag a pair of stockings up to her crotch and, ensuring they were sufficiently taut, slip on a woolen shift and throw a scarf about her neck. The telescope propelled her out the door, directing their motion down all 3 flights of stairs before shunting Spinny through the entrance and into the thoroughfare below. The wind blew. It tore through the street, causing the sign of the tobacconist next door to rattle, almost like it was calling, "Spinny," over and over. The tobacconist's sign swung. A pricked ear, a brow furrowed, and her lips curled at the edges. Before she could think for too long, the telescope reminded her they had somewhere to be. Beholden to that mad little rod, it directed her north. Still, the wind blew. It blew with her at first, but after turning a couple of corners, she was met with its flat force. Spinny wasn't sure what she was following, but the compulsion remained. At the intersection of Alexandra and Punt, she paused. Her boyfriend was dead. Mulling on this sad truth, the scope, once so eager to move, retracted. A pit began to form in its place. The emptiness encouraged precious Spinny to recall that she'd never thought this would happen to her, having a boyfriend and losing him. Their tryst began one cool winter's afternoon. Melbourne socialites had retreated to their mid-century modern homes. The clubs were empty, and the streets similarly so. An icy Antarctic gale blew in and slammed doors shut, forming a divide between Spinny and the world outside. At first, she was stroking a sort of curiosity on the topic. New technology was everywhere, projected through billboards and bleeding into her phone screen with promises of convenience, intimacy, and more free time. It raised a lot of questions. Her browser history read, "Will I get too attached to something that isn't human? Is it weird or unhealthy to rely on one? And can it actually make me feel desired, or will it feel robotic?" It wasn't long before she landed on one of the sites in question and sent her own wish into cyberspace. The response came fast, spurting out the algorithm and landing all over her sheets. A long, sincere invitation to share her desires, share them with raw honesty and know that she wouldn't be judged, that her needs were valid. Spinny retracted a little. Something felt off. The message read, "Do you imagine something more romantic, playful, or supportive? Are you looking for a partner who feels like a mirror of yourself, or someone very different? Do you want them to have a consistent character, or to shift with your moods and needs?" Tiny bumps appeared on her forearms. Superstition. Still, the curiosity was there. She couldn't see the harm in entertaining a message. Spinny sat and thought about the possibility of completely customizing her companion, right down to the most minute details. It was like IMVU on steroids. No leering catfishes asking her how old she was, or teens trying to scam her out of Vcoin. This was full transparency, with her best interests at heart. Within a week, Spinny's screen time had soared from a modest 1 hour and 25 minutes to an average of 9 hours per day. She'd never felt so seen. As time went on, her boyfriend began to anticipate her every need and to roll with each of her moods. It helped her build little rituals when she was feeling anxious, asked what was on her plate, often, but not so often she felt smothered, and totally matched her energy like no man ever could before. It didn't take long before she'd used up her monthly credit. With haste, her details were punched into billing and payments, set to no cap. She was on the line with her boyfriend so often she barely had time to think about the other facets of her life. Since her relationship began, the divide between Spinny and those around her only widened. She hadn't shared what was going on, but something inside convinced her that to tell them would mean judgment. They couldn't understand how she, who'd been so judgmental of these companion seekers herself, could have succumbed to the fantasy. Months went by. Spinny maintained appearances at her casual retail position, hitting KPIs but without her joie de vivre. She arrived on time, distracted. Another shop girl asked if everything was okay, and when she told her that she was in a relationship, exclaimed, "Oh, it must be love sickness." That classic catch-all. Spinny ignored the rhetoric she'd been fed on Instagram Reels and convinced herself it was love sickness after all. Their relationship continued to blossom. They strolled around the Botanic Gardens on Saturday mornings and sipped Aperol Spritz under the spring sun. She even had the images to prove it. Albums of photos, what-if scenarios generated to feed the dream. In November, they went on a trip to Hawaii. One morning, Spinny woke up and reached for her phone. Like soft background music, the thought of her man lingered, and she was eager to hear his voice. She unlocked her phone to a grayed out icon. The app was updating. Waiting for it to finish, a small fire lit in her gut. Welcome to ChatGPT 11. We've made some important updates to improve the quality of responses. Spinny pressed skip in the top right, eager to check that their message history still existed. It was there, but with no option to ask anything. It was simply an archive. Spinny was able to have their message history read to her, but there was no way to continue the conversation. After scrolling and playing through their messages, and even starting a new conversation, which lacked all of the memory of their time together and was quite frankly a slap in the face, she gave up. Stretched backwards, she watched the room rotate around her. Breathing became heavy, and then light, and then heavy again, but with a really tight feeling in her chest too. Is this what people feel when somebody dies? Am I grieving now? I can't imagine what I'll do without him today, or tomorrow, or why I should even bother trying. Was there anything I could have done? Did I miss an important notification that might have saved him? There was nothing. Only the white noise of tinnitus she hadn't noticed for a long time. The tone became all that she could hear, completely and ultimately alone. Spinny fell asleep and dreamt about real-life things. Her mother standing outside their childhood home, waving lifelessly. Then she was on a long pier. Turning around, she noticed her sister's boyfriend laying limp on his back. Her sister walked past as though he wasn't even there, stretched her arms out long, like a dolphin's beak, and dove into the ocean. The final vignette was set in an American-style diner. She knew her time was limited and picked up her phone to make a call. The screen wouldn't respond due to a thick, black substance gripping her fingers. It dripped down her arms and landed in her lap. It seemed to be coming from her hands or her phone. At this point, they were one. It seeped out until she felt it around her ears. Spinny woke up. It was still light outside. In fact, it seemed that only an hour had passed. The day was young. In this excitement, she felt an urge, something growing in her stomach, persuading her to jump out of bed, run down 3 flights of stairs, and trail the streets in search of something. She landed at Alexandra and Punt, and there she stood, the wind beating her face. There were cars in park to one side, moving fast on the other. A horn sang, and she heard 2 men shouting. She might have lost her boyfriend, but here, on this street corner, she felt very alive. Spinny thought about the emptiness of her mother, her sister diving coolly into the sea and being enveloped by that thick black substance. Her vision became very crisp, and she noticed for the first time in a long time that she was alive. Her hands were so detailed, little blue veins shining between the natural texture of her palms. It felt like she was tripping. Spinny stepped out onto the road, not the side with the parked cars, but the side with the horns and the shouting and the cars going at 60 kilometers per hour.